we're in the presence of royalty here. We got some very, very special guests, but I'm your host for the day, Sam Basu. And Fiddler has hit 20 years. That's quite a journey for a tech product. And we have some folks here who have been working with Fiddler hands-on from the early days to what it is now. We do have the present Fiddler team come and join us towards the end. But we're going to start with the person that we cannot talk Fiddler without, Mr. Eric Lawrence. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. So thank you for being here. So, Eric, why don't you introduce yourself first, really quick?
Sure. So I'm Eric Lawrence. I started working on Fiddler just over 20 years ago, and I have got some slides to kind of give a little bit of background about where Fiddler came from and sort of how it grew in its early years. Currently, I'm back at Microsoft. I work on the on the Microsoft Defender team. And so I started out at Microsoft and took some side trips along the way, including working for Telerik when they acquired Fiddler.
Yeah, I was going to ask about, 2003. Like, did you just wake up one fine morning and decide, like, you wanted to do something good for humanity, or was there, like, real things you wanted to solve? So why don't we bring up some of the visuals that you have, so maybe you can, walk us through.
Sure.
So we are looking at your deck here.
Yep. Yeah, so basically I was asked to kind of present a little bit about Fiddler's origins and kind of, tell a little bit of the story about how I went from a young intern at Microsoft to a guy who had a car with a license plate of HTTP. And the story is pretty simple, and it's, not any sort of grand vision I had. I was a program manager on the Office Online team working on clip art. And so this was the first app that I worked on for Microsoft as a full-time employee. And so it was called the Microsoft Clip Organizer. And the Clip Organizer was part of Office XP and Office 2003, and basically allowed people to search for clip art online. But sometimes it didn't work. Sometimes the clips wouldn't appear. And so you'd see your local clips, but instead of seeing the web clips that you were expecting, you'd just see some weird error page. And so this was a persistent problem that the team had. Fiddler was really born one day when I walked into my dev manager's office and I saw him sort of cursing at Visual Studio. And I just kind of silently watched from the back of his office, trying to figure out what he was doing. And I realized that what he was doing is he was kind of cursing every time a tooltip disappeared in Visual Studio. And so finally I tapped him on the shoulder and I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm debugging the web service. And I was like, no, literally, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm trying to see the HTTP request and response. And the only way to do this in Visual Studio is to hover over the variable while it's paused at a breakpoint. And in the tooltip, you can see the hex of the request. And so that's what I'm doing. And I was like, oh, man, there's got to be a better way. And so I asked around and I learned about Microsoft Netmon. The problem is Netmon at the time was extremely difficult to use. And so effectively, nobody used it. And, being kind of a person who really believed in the power of software, I was sure there's got to be a better way to do it than this. And fortunately, one of the things about web technology is web technology has sort of this built-in assumption that most browsers support and most web software supports, and that's the notion of a proxy server. And there's this quote by David Wheeler that all problems in computer science can be solved by just adding a level of indirection. And in the case of web technology, that indirection is a proxy. And so I had this idea of, well, what if I had a proxy that just showed the network traffic? And so the very first thing I did was, at the time, there was a C++ proxy called the Internet Junk Buster proxy. It was open source and attempted to block ads. And I said, well, what if I just take this C++ and kind of hack it together so it emits everything out to the system console? And so I built that in an afternoon or two, and basically it worked. And I was kind of amazed that it worked. I kind of gave it to some of the developers and said, hey, I built this thing. What do you think? And within a few weeks, basically the halls of the Office Online team sounded like a Vegas casino. And the reason they sounded like a Vegas casino was I was just blindly echoing all of the web traffic to the console. And for old school programmers, you know that if you send a character 7 to the terminal, it rings the system bell. And ASCII or clip art has a bunch of character 7s within it. And so this was sort of this very vivid indicator that the thing that I had built was useful. but it also felt completely ridiculous. It felt like just an absurd way to try and solve this problem. But I validated the idea that proxy was the way to go. Around the same time, I built a plugin for Internet Explorer that allowed modification of data. And so this was a security testing tool. And I thought, well, proxies can modify data too, and they work across different clients. And so I had this idea of like, maybe I should build something that can not just see the traffic, but can also change the traffic. And so using my awesome design skills of the day, I sort of threw together sort of the first visual of what I thought this was going to look like. And for folks who are paying attention, this is basically Microsoft Outlook. You have a list of messages on the left-hand side, and then you have the view of those messages to be able to read their content on the right-hand side. And so I was like, this is the thing I'm going to build. And so I put this together. And I decided that I was going to build it in C#, which was then a new language, which was being developed at Microsoft at the time, including by the guy you saw in the first slide, my college roommate, Anson, who was a program manager on the C# team. There were only two problems with this plan that I had. One, I didn't really know anything about HTTP. And two, I didn't know anything about C#. But this being 2003, we had a thing called bookstores where you could go and buy books in person. And so I bought two books. I bought HTTP, The Definitive Guide, and I bought a book called Programming C#. And working through these chapter by chapter, I'd read a chapter about HTTP, I'd read a chapter about C#, and I'd go type more and more code. And I basically did this throughout 2003. And by October 2003, I had the first version of what I was sort of willing to share out as Fiddler. It kind of looks like Fiddler today, in the jam. If you squint at it, it's kind of, where it is. Now, one question people ask is, why Fiddler? And the answer to that is super simple. I was on the clip art team, and I knew we had a lot of pictures of violins. And so for a product logo, I could just go pick a fiddle out of our clip art. And so this was the splash screen from that first version. And this was before everything in the world was named like JS Fiddle and something or another fiddle. And so this was early on. And so that was the first splash screen. Now, just for sort of context setting, these were the original devices that Fiddler was developed on. One was my personal laptop, which was a Dell Inspiron 8200 with some sort of Pentium 4 maybe in it. And then I also had a Toshiba Magna server, and that had two CPUs, two physical CPUs in it, both of which were running at 866 megahertz. And I think I probably had somewhere around 32 megs of RAM, maybe 64, something like that, some comically small amount of memory. But these were the devices that Fiddler was initially developed on. Now, Fiddler proved pretty popular within the team. And so when we launched the Office Online service with Office 2003, Fiddler was an indispensable tool for the team. We had massive performance problems, and Fiddler helped uncover places where we had failed to set caching, where we were not doing compression properly. We had one case where you'd click a checkbox and it would send like 400 kilobytes of data to the server. And so Fiddler was super indispensable for solving that. And Fiddler quickly spread within Microsoft. Around 2004, I moved over to join the Internet Explorer team. I had complained about a bug that I'd found with Fiddler, and I got a response back, which was basically like, yeah, we're not going to look at that. But the footer on that email was, want to change the world? Join the new Internet Explorer team today. And so I went over and moved to the IE team. And when I moved to the IE team, I said, hey, I've got this Fiddler thing. Maybe, we can use it. And they're like, you're going to be too busy working on Internet Explorer to work on Fiddler. Probably just forget about that. I was like, well, that's one possibility. And what I secretly suspected indeed happened, which was within months, everyone in the Internet Explorer team was using Fiddler. Around 2005, 2006, Fiddler gained support for HTTPS modifications, which at the time was pretty unique. And so I got to do some random fun things like this. I had Fiddler rewriting my Fidelity account balance, and some guy in my office looked over and saw that I had billions of dollars in Fidelity. But it also led to some problems later. Like, I tweeted out a picture of my PayPal balance being like $11 quadrillion or something, just for fun. And I got a panicked call from one of the information security people at PayPal begging to know about this bug. I was like, no, it was just a client-side modification. I had funny instances where people would contact me and say, "Hey, can I see the Fiddler roadmap?" And it was like, the Fiddler roadmap is a pile of napkins on my desk. Like, I don't think I can really share that with you. But I continued to work on Fiddler. It got an Engineering Excellence Award at Microsoft. And so I got to hang out with Bill Gates and got a picture and a spike and random photos around the company, and ended up getting used by tens of thousands of people inside Microsoft. But by 2009, Fiddler felt kind of done. And so I had gotten a more demanding job within the IE team. I became a lead, and I was just sort of putzing along, continuing to issue Fiddler updates, but nothing very interesting. And then around 2011, I got an email basically expressing some interest in acquiring Fiddler. And so I was like, huh, okay, yeah, that seems reasonable. I'm kind of done with it. I'm too busy. We'll let someone else take over. Now, Microsoft had a pretty strict moonlighting policy, so I was a little bit worried about Fiddler being releasable at all. But I'd made some good decisions, including the fact that Fiddler was always developed on my own personal machines, never any machines from Microsoft. And I got pretty lucky. Microsoft loved Fiddler, but didn't want to have anything to do with it for liability reasons. And so they ended up signing an agreement that said, hey, you can sell Fiddler. So I was basically midway through a deal to sell Fiddler and never work on it again. But I saw the program managers that were acquiring Fiddler, and they were just doing things in just the craziest, hardest, most complicated ways. Like, they didn't know how to use it, and they've been looking at it for months. And this is one of the first times that I really saw people trying to use Fiddler. And I'm like, oh my God, I've created a monster. It's too hard to use. It's too hard to understand. So I decided I'd write a book. And so every morning I went to the coffee shop and I would go type about some scenario that I thought was interesting. And eventually, within a few months, I had a book. Now, it ended up taking a lot longer than I predicted, because as I was writing the book, I'm like, wow, I just wrote 3 pages about how to do this thing. Probably should have been a button. So I'd go back to my office and make it a button, and then I'd have to delete the 3 pages and go back and write them again. But Fiddler got way better, got translated in a variety of languages. Around February, I decided, you know what? I actually don't want to sell Fiddler. I want to keep working on it. But in March, Telerik reached out and they said, well, we want to acquire Fiddler, but we want you to come with it. We want you to work on it. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And so at the end of August 2012, Fiddler was acquired by Telerik. And in October, I moved down to Austin to work on it. There was a lot of concern at the time about what Telerik was going to do with the tool, but they promised to keep the Windows version free forever. And eventually the community saw that the company was really investing in further improvements in Fiddler. And me working on it full time meant that the pace of change was accelerated. It led to some weird cases of fame where people would recognize me. But my colleagues at Telerik kept me humble, reminded me that really nobody cared about me. They cared about the tool. And that was great. Overall, I worked on Fiddler full-time or close to full-time for about 12 years. I wrote 38,000 lines of C#, way more than that actually, but most of my early C# got deleted. Did 175 builds, wrote 2 versions of a full-length paperback. I moved to Telerik and supported new operating system platforms. And I changed the icon a bunch of times, which people had a lot of feedback about. At the end of 2015, I stopped working on Fiddler and left Telerik. I went to work on Chrome security for a couple of years. And in 2018, I came back to Microsoft. But one of the things I wanted to mention for folks who haven't been keeping track is I actually still work on Fiddler, and I work on Fiddler through the extension model. So one of the things when I joined the Edge team and Edge replatformed atop Chromium was I built a netlog importer. So both Chrome and Edge and any Chromium-based browser can export their traffic into this JSON format. But it's kind of hard to use. And so within Fiddler, you can just do file import and import directly out of those browsers. So you don't even need to have Fiddler on your client to capture traffic. You can just use the browser, and then you can visualize it in Fiddler. I also wrote something called the native messaging meddler, which was basically there's a feature in browsers that allow you to talk to native applications on your local machine. Extensions can do it. And it's this feature called native messaging. But debugging native messaging was super hard. And so I thought, hey, I'll just build a proxy for native messaging. Even though it's not HTTP, I can proxy it in the same way. But I was like, man, I don't really have time to go build all the inspectors and breakpoint debugging and everything else. I wish I still had the Fiddler code and could just use it. And I realized I don't need the Fiddler code. I can use Fiddler's extension model. And so the native messaging meddler is a plugin to the browser that basically sends the traffic out to this native app, and this native app then proxies it over HTTP to Fiddler. So you can use Fiddler's inspectors and Fiddler's breakpoint debugging to debug something that didn't even exist at the time that Fiddler was built. And so one of the things I would encourage people is to think about ways that you can tailor Fiddler to work in your workflows. So that's it for the background deck. The book's still out, cheaper than ever. I blog about things, including Fiddler, all the time on my blog. And I really want to thank everybody that's been along for this long journey. 20 years is an amazing amount of time. Certainly when I was that young clip art PM, I had no idea that we were going to end up here.
Wow, that's such a story, and some of the images, bring back so many memories here. And by the way, folks, we have quite a few folks showing up here. We're probably going to run 3-4 minutes, a little behind schedule, but that's really quite the story here. And our good friend Thindel here is in the chat room. But yeah, he's asking about why was it called Fiddler? Well, it's we're glad that it wasn't called the Baden proxy tree, isn't it, Eric? So yeah, no, Eric mentioned this. He was working on the Office clip art team, and there were a lot of artwork around Fiddler, and you're fiddling with network traffic, so it made sense. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to take your screen down here.
Yep.
Eric, and we cannot start talking about the history of Fiddler without going back to the earliest of days in 2003, and it's been quite the journey. I think the software developer community is going to be forever indebted to you. Now we have fancy dev tools inside of browsers if you are doing browser-based apps, but all of that kind of started from some of these early days of meddling with TCP/IP and figuring out how to show that nicely to developers. So thank you from all of us, and just you're amazing. Keep being awesome and doing awesome things.
Thanks for arranging this. This is fun.
All right, folks, we're going to transition over to our next speaker. So Eric, we're going to let you go.
Thanks.
Bye, Eric, for now. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on our next guest here. Rob, if you are ready for prime time on the internet. Hey,
all good.
Rob Lauer.
Hey, Sam. Oh, it's been forever.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for inviting me.
I
don't know how I follow up on Eric, but I'll do my best.
Well, you got your Michigan shirt on.
I know. I mean,
some cheer.
So you can't see it's a little blurred. I'm from Wisconsin, like arch enemies, but my sister went to Michigan Law School, so I got to show a little love.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Rob, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Yeah. So, hi, everyone. I'm Rob Lauer, Director of Developer Relations at an IoT company, believe it or not, called Blues. But the reason I am here is that I worked at Telerik from 2013 to 2020-ish, something like that, or 2021, something like that. Obviously, was part of the Progress acquisition, and so during that time, I worked on so many parts of what we were doing at Telerik, so many amazing things like Kendo UI, native script, Fiddler, Chef towards the end as well. So I'm relatively experienced in a lot of different parts of the company.
Yeah, a lot of people have touched a lot of our product portfolios over the years. Here's another one of our good friends, Eve. Hi, Eve. Happy birthday to Fiddler. We'll try to play a shorter video. My good friend Cindy is trying to back me up. We did have a social role which was a little shorter, so we'll try to play that back a little bit. But this has been quite the journey. 20 years of any software being around is a long time. So. Walk me through this here, Rob, because when I think nowadays, so many developers, we have kind of grown up with Fiddler. This is what we use, in our dev workflows every single day. But I have been a Windows developer for 10 years when I first started out, and then I became a Mac developer, and I don't want to go back. But the moment I switched over, I was like, oh, now I can't run this on a Mac. I have to get on a VM. And run Fiddler, and that's messing up my workflow. So did you hear this a lot? People wanted Fiddler to be cross-platform?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was in the same boat. So my engineering career started, in the late 90s. I can't even believe I'm saying that, but I was all Windows for 10, 15 years, if not longer. And then I had the same thing where I was using Fiddler. I mean, seeing what Eric was talking about, it like brought back so many great memories. I mean, even though the UI, like people make fun of the UI, like, I don't know, part of me like still loves it because it's so comfortable to me. But I was in the same boat, right? I was using Fiddler in my web development days. I was, doing the ASP.NET web forms, all the C#, all the things. And it was an indispensable tool for me. And for me, like, it was around, so when I joined Telerik 2013, it was really around that 2013 to 2018 period where we would go to events, and there was this big shift that was happening, right? Where everybody who was a quote unquote serious developer was on Windows. And now all of a sudden, all this tooling, all these languages, everything was available on different different platforms, right? People were showing up with MacBooks all of a sudden, and they wanted this tooling. And just like you, Sam, I was like, well, Fiddler, it's out of my tool belt now, right? Because I'm switching over to using a Mac. Although ironically now I might end up switching back to Windows. But anyway,
It's all the same. It
it,
should
it
not
is
make
all
a
the same now,
difference,
which is
right?
which is the beauty.
Nowadays,
It's
yeah,
so easy to switch back and forth.
right.
But anyway, yeah, to the point there, I think we were hearing a lot from people who wanted to keep using Fiddler and not using Parallels or not using a VM or whatever to be able to leverage that tooling, and which is how Fiddler Everywhere was born. And yeah, so I was part of the Fiddler Everywhere team for a relatively brief amount of time, but that was an interesting time, right? Because we release a product that is, which we, admittedly probably made a mistake. And in our presentation was like, hey, here's the new Fiddler. Well, it wasn't really. It was like a complementary Fiddler, right? If you're using the old Windows Fiddler Classic, as it's called now, great, keep using it. We're not trying to like tell people or force people to move over. But if
Right.
you're on Mac, if you're on Linux, if you want these net new features, if you want, yes, a much better looking UI, and arguably easier to use, easier to get onboarded with it, try out this new thing called Fiddler Everywhere.
Yeah, and I mean, timing-wise, this was also, if you look back at the history of Microsoft technologies, this was also when Mono was a big port of .NET outside of just Windows,
Mhm.
and the Xamarin team was going. Everyone wanted to go cross-platform. So in a way, it was the only thing we could have done trying to make it cross-platform. But again, this is something we always say, even to this day, like nobody's moving your cheese. All of the goodness that
Right.
Eric had put in your Fiddler for Windows, that stays, and that's, you can keep using it the way you have been. But
Yeah.
modern developers, they can use whatever development stacks, even Linux, if you wanted to, and still be able to leverage the power of Fiddler, because like network is fundamental. Now let me ask you this: like in your role nowadays, like you see a lot of different types of devices, right?
Yeah.
IoT or any type of smart devices, and every one of them has to connect up to the internet. So,
Right.
network stays kind of fundamental to anything we do with software.
Oh yeah, nothing has changed there. And in my role transitioning, I tell people I've been in the web world for decades, and now transitioning to the IoT, they're like, oh, that must be like such a fundamental shift. Frankly, no, it's the same stuff. I mean, granted, I'm building with physical hardware instead of software, in a browser environment, but it's still the same thing. We're still sending and receiving data to and from the cloud, right? And there are numerous times, to say the least, where, well, let me back up a bit. The tooling, which one thing I've learned in my 2 years in the IoT, is the tooling around what we're doing in the embedded world versus the web is literally like 20 years behind. So I hate all you web developers now because you have these tools, well, your browser tooling now, which I love that you mentioned that when you were talking to Eric, that Fiddler like really inspired a lot of this tooling. But anyway, like all this tooling that you have to inspect, alter, debug in the browser itself, like I am so insanely jealous because all of that is way more difficult when you're talking about debugging here. I just happen to have this like menagerie
Oh,
of like
wow.
hardware components here that does something
Yeah.
cool, but it's much more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I mean, in the present day, like web developers, yes, they're cool and they have all the fancy tools, but I'm old school. The moment I step into mobile development, the moment I step
Yeah,
into enterprise workflows that do desktop, things fall apart because I don't have
absolutely.
my browser dev tools. And also, the power of Fiddler, it really is not just in seeing the traffic, as Eric mentioned, it's, really meddling with it.
Oh yeah.
Faking something. What if, your users turned off images or JavaScript? Like, what's the user experience like?
Yeah.
A lot of Fiddler users really use it for like performance tuning and for these edge cases that's hard to do by
No,
hand.
I totally agree. And like one of the things I loved the most about all the versions of Fiddler when I was at Progress still was the rules and the autoresponders. I forget what the name of it is now exactly, but that ability to, I can remember going in and drilling into like um, to looking at a production web application and inspecting the traffic, and then being able to swap in a test version of a JavaScript library. Like, I mean, that's so powerful, right? Like, because sometimes obviously when you're in a production environment, you're using maybe all kinds of CDNs and everything that you're not using locally. There's a lot more variables, and you want to test one thing. I think I wrote it. I remember I had to look it up yesterday. I wrote an article about like testing in production with Fiddler, like the power that you can. I mean, it's just pretty amazing what you could and can do with Fiddler.
Yeah. Although Eve is teasing you that you would be happier if you wore an OSU shirt. But that's a very American joke for football fans here. Some of our good friends are here. Let's see. Full Schnabel, yeah, Fiddler on the Roof. That reference gets brought up a lot. Now, Fiddler, we'll talk about this a little bit more when we bring the team on. But there are a variety of ways in which you can use it. Like Fulschnabel was asking, what if you're doing microservices? What if you're doing you wanted to see network traffic in between services? So all of that is doable. So if you look at the present Fiddler portfolio, it comes in a variety of formats. I mean, yes, you'll have to install it on the machine somewhere on a server if you want to look at traffic, but you can also embed it like the engine of everything goodness that Eric has built over the initial days of Fiddler. All of that is available. All of that power is available, along with a lot more enhancements as a standalone, .NET library. So you can embed that and build your own dashboard. So however you want to use Fiddler, all of the power is not just on your machine. It can very well be used elsewhere as well. Now let me also ask you this, Rob. I know like the Fiddler team would love to talk about this, but there's something to be said about dog fooding our own stuff, right?
Sure.
Nothing says more about your confidence in your own UI and your own products when you start building other things with your own products. So in the early days, like, did we debate a lot as to which direction we wanted to go with Fiddler in taking cross-platform?
So on your dog fooding point, like I think that's really like the key value prop of the role that we're in developer relations. Obviously, like as former and sort of current engineers, this is why this role is really critical in tech companies. Um, and yeah, like so when the conversations around Fiddler Everywhere were first starting, um, it I don't know, in hindsight it seems really obvious, but this need for cross-platform, um, it really was born out of the fact that we were all kind of maturing in our development tooling and our development environments, and I don't frankly don't remember like any of the issues we had were around. I do recall there was some conversations around like taking the Fiddler Classic and trying to port that into um, a Mac, and I forget what we were thinking about using to do that. It's I'm blanking on that now, but I know like at the end of the day, it made more sense to start net new with
Yeah,
Fiddler Everywhere. And
yeah,
do
we did.
you recall what that was? The
Yeah, I think initially we went all in with mono, and to your point,
With
like
you.
this is not an easy decision. Like even to this day, if
Yeah.
I sit down and I have to start a cross-platform app, it all depends on what are my skills, what type of code base I want to go, maintain. Like, is it React Native? Is it Electron based? Is it going to be mono? Is it going to be something where I bring in like a SPA framework and just try to shove it inside of a mono? Nowadays, you have Maui, so even today, it's not an easy answer. There's just a
Right.
lot of cross-platform solutions. So I think we have had a few restarts, and the mono days were fine, except we could get more performance out of it by going with something more modern. And modern web frameworks are just so much well tested and proven for success. So a lot of people actually do not know this, but present Fiddler everywhere. Maybe this is common knowledge. It's the front end. A lot of it is actually Angular, so we are utilizing our Angular grids and charts and a lot of the UI that we do in Kendo UI inside of Fiddler. So it gives you a little bit of confidence to know that Fiddler, and this is the most embarrassing thing about Fiddler sometimes, if you have not used it, the moment you launch it, it captures everything. It's proxy. Like Eric mentioned, everything on your machine goes through it, and it's almost embarrassing how much it captures. You're going to see every call home from every product that you're running, from Office to Google Suites to Apple Suites, everything is captured. So the main grid, which shows you all of the traffic, it's like a non-stop going thing. Like it updates multiple times every second to capture all of that. So if you wanted more confidence in list of things or a grid view to show that amount of streaming data, like Fiddler is a classic use case. So I think we debated and we restarted things from scratch to land where we are at right now, and I think it's been a good decision.
Yeah, you're giving me some PTSD when I think back now to those days of I know we had not necessarily with Fiddler, but with other tooling within the company, we had talked about. I know we had way back in the day with Telerik platform days, if I may bring that up.
Hmm.
Like we had talked about
Yeah.
like a Chrome application or whatever they call it, Chrome apps. Yeah, I think that was the name of it.
Yeah.
And an Electron, of course. And there's one other technology in there, and it was a rough time as we were kind of
Mhm.
like trying to figure out the multi-platform application. Like yeah, I like to think it's a little more of a solved problem now, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and Full Schnabel in the chat room is bringing up a good point. Like, I love it when we so easily call things legacy. To me, legacy is just not a good word because, like, if you're running your existing business on software, maybe you've written that 20 years back, but that's not legacy. It's real for you. It's running your things right
Right.
now.
Legacy is
Uh,
money making.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, I mean, folks who have always used, Fiddler, quote unquote legacy, we call that classic, and it's still there doing the exact same things that it
Yeah.
did when it started out. So in fact, like right now, if you look at the Fiddler portfolio, like Fiddler Everywhere is the reboot of Fiddler, which truly runs with the same UI, same user experience across Windows, Mac, and Linux. But on Windows, you can also go back to using Fiddler Classic. It's not a short amount of time it's taken us. It's a lot of engineering to bring it up to parity, so that we have feature-wise, it doesn't make a difference as a developer. It's the same feature set between Fiddler Everywhere and Fiddler Classic. Fiddler Everywhere just happens to be over a web shim that just runs everywhere. Yeah.
Now, Sam, I want to put you on the spot for a second. Is Fiddler Jam that when I left, Fiddler Jam was just taking off?
Yeah, we are still working through it. It's a big
Okay.
portfolio. What we want to improve on is going forward. We'll have some of the engineering folks join us. Is catering to some of the niche use cases of how people use web traffic nowadays. The developer workflow is kind of done. We know how to use Fiddler, especially when we're building APIs, when we're building microservices, or front end web, mobile, or desktop apps. What is not very flushed out yet, and there are lots of opportunities for us to do better, is what does this mean for QA people? What does this mean for support people? What does this mean for end users when they are trying to run your app and they say something's not working? We have Fiddler Cap, we have Fiddler Jam, so more on these things that we are working on, but we are also trying to cater to some of the newer network things for you, like how does a low-level IoT device connect up? What does this mean for gRPC or the latest HTTP2? So a lot of things up in the air that we are trying to consider what comes next.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's going to be a busy hour. I have the engineering team come up at the top of the next hour, but I have our next speaker already waiting in line. So, Rob, thank you for all the things that you did. Once a colleague, always a colleague, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you for your years at Progress. You kind of oversaw the evolution of Fiddler from its early days to the portfolio that we know now. So
I take none of the credit. I'm sure you have, the amazing engineers on staff who are still there are, they're the lifeblood of Fiddler. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, Rob, we'll let you go back to your day things, but thank you so much for joining, and happy birthday again, Fiddler. So, Rob, we're going to let you go and transition over to our next speaker.
Happy birthday, Fiddler.
Happy birthday, Fiddler.
Happy birthday, Fiddler.
Happy 20 years, Fiddler.
Hi, Fiddler. I'm wishing you a happy 20th birthday.
Every time Fiddler has something to offer for me and help me do my job better. So, thanks a lot, Fiddler, and happy birthday.
I am proud to be a part of the brand, and I wish Fiddler continued success in the years ahead.
Happy birthday, Fiddler. Wish you many more happy years and stay shiny.
Happy 20th birthday, Fiddler.
Happy 20th birthday, Fiddler.
Hey, Fiddler. Happy birthday.
Hey, Fiddler. Happy birthday.
Yeah, nowadays every kid knows about Fiddler. He's famous. Happy 20th birthday, Fiddler.
Happy birthday, Fiddler. 20 years. Wow. I remember when I was 20. That was a long time ago.
Happy birthday, Fiddler.
All right. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on our next guest here, if you're ready. Mr. Robert Boedigheimer, how are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for joining. I know you're about an hour behind me. No, 2 hours actually behind me. So it's still early in the morning for you. But we love you, Robert, for all the things that you do. But why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Okay. So I've been a web developer since late 1990s. Full-time job, I'm e-commerce developer using ASP.NET. So every day I'm using Fiddler for various things. I've done a lot of conference talks, and I also am a Pluralsight author. And I was searching around last night, and I trying to find the first time that I used Fiddler. The first mention I saw is 2004. I had a note.
Wow.
I have to look at this tool. And then the first time I showed it at a conference was 2008. So yeah, I've been using Fiddler Classic and now everywhere for a really long time.
Yeah, I love it that this stream, I mean, I promise you, we have younger, more cool people joining who are actually working on Fiddler, but this is turning out to be a group of, old men just remembering things from the past. But that's how long it has been. Eric talked about the early days with, the Office team and Office Online and clip art. And here you are using Fiddler since, 2004. And so let me ask you this, like as a web developer, you've been a web guy all your life. How has the web evolved for you from the 90s to now?
Oh, wow. Yeah, so like you said, I was doing the very simple, just HTTP 1.0 basic page. I think I even did one before I had a lot of images or media. So that was a long time ago. So just the evolution from the brochureware, the documents. I mean, it was originally created for the web, right? For physics people to share documents, and how that's morphed into the kind of apps that people run and the kind of things we do is kind of crazy.
Indeed. Quick note, by the way, Eric was still hanging out with us, but now he has to, you don't see him on camera, but now he has to go for a meeting. So he says, hi, Robert.
Hi, Eric. I got to meet him for the first time. I've read his book, obviously. I'm always amazed, and he rehashed it with he didn't know HTTP, he didn't know C#,
Yeah.
and on his own time, he created Fiddler, which I just think is amazing. So
the two fundamental things that you need to do
Yeah.
with Fiddler is HTTP and C#.
So I'm glad he didn't have imposter syndrome and say, I'm not going to be able to do this, but just dug in and got it done. It's amazing. So
Yeah. Our good friend Surly Dev in the chat room is saying, hey, Junior Dev, we get to use a tool that is older than you.
It's getting there, isn't it?
It's getting there. 20-somethings are starting web development now in a very, very different world. But, arguably a more complex world where you would want to know more about what's going on in your network, because there are so many low-level things now that we didn't have starting out, with early days of HTTP. I remember doing Fiddler over, so before .NET was a thing, before .NET 1.0, which was, I think, 2002-ish, sometime that, but it really got streamed like 2003, 2004. So before ASP.NET, we had what was called Classic ASP, and we wrote a lot of spaghetti code, which was a lot of UI markup that was closely tied up and mixed in with some business logic, which was great to test with. But that's how, we used to start out, trying to see what is the server spitting back, why is it not rendering, and that's my initial days of Fiddler. There's a request here towards the end. If you are, brave enough, Cindy is throwing in the challenge too.
Yeah, I have. So I actually I won that guitar, and I have yet to learn how to play it, unfortunately.
Oh, that's your assignment for your off work hours.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, the main thing that I see different today when you're talking about things that are different is just all the integrations. And that's where Fiddler really shines for me now. Like you said, I learned HTTP by using Fiddler, watching the traffic, understanding what it did. But back then, I controlled all the parts. Now we're running things that have tons of vendors that we need to integrate. The ability to do a trace. So I do this every day. I did it yesterday. I'm working with a vendor. We pull up Fiddler, do the trace, say, nope, that's what we're sending you right there. That's correct, or it's not, right? And working with operations people, security people, QA people, passing the traces around so people can look at it and comment on it. But that's been a real change for us. It's just
the proof is in the pudding. Like, once you show them a stack trace, there is no other way around it. That's what's happening.
Yep. So what I find Fiddler is unique for is the meddling with things, but also every vendor you run into says, put me in the head of your page. It'll be fine. Performance will be great. We'll never impact you. And I'd love to take Fiddler, drag their request over to the rules, make it slow or make it fail, and show them that's not true. And this is why we have to do this differently, why we need to defer you, or just to debunk those claims of everything will be fine. So I use Fiddler. I turn it on and I literally say, I want to look at my site with only my domain and my CDN. That's it. Everything else fails or is slow. Pull up the page and see what the experience is. And it helps me convince people we need to worry about that stuff, right? If the CSS isn't loading fast from a vendor, you're going to have a big blank section on your page. And that's the stuff that's tough without a tool like Fiddler, and surgically reaching in and saying, it's this request I want to have fail, and here's how I want it to fail, is what I find kind of amazing and useful every day.
And that is something I have learned a lot from you. And Robert, by the way, has Pluralsight courses. He talks about this all over the world in so many conferences, user groups, and so on. But a lot of us, are trained to look at Fiddler when we are developing an app. How's my API working? Or maybe once you are trying to test your app, you're trying to push it out to production, you're tracing bugs and you're trying to figure out how is something happening. You have kind of opened my eyes towards using Fiddler as a performance tuning tool, because it gives you all those knobs and levers to say, what if this thing is slow? What if you're on a slow network? What if this JavaScript file does not get delivered? So, walk us through how did you start doing that?
Yeah, so like you said, I started working. I did what you said initially, right? I used it as a tool. I could just review things, and then I would slowly grow into, we actually had a failure. it took me a while to figure out who it was. So then I came at it from, like you said, I'm proactively now saying before I'm going to engage with a particular file or a plugin or whatever, that's the first thing I'm going to do. Make the request, drag it over, simulate those failures. So it's really easy to do with the rules. Just be able to drag it over and say that, make that last 20 seconds. Or we also do things where I want to see changes. So we had a designer, this was kind of cool. The designer uses a Mac and they wanted to see, they're doing some CSS for us. They wanted to see how would this look in your production site. I don't want to have to take it, integrate it, deploy it. I just said, use Fiddler, set up a rule, make your CSS, put it on your desktop, change it to what you want. I'll request the site, it gets intercepted, returns the new CSS, and they're actually able to walk through, troubleshoot their CSS against my production server. That's pretty amazing as well. So yeah, as you're watching the traces, just like I said, there's ways to set it up too, to be, if it's not your domain, make it slow. All those kinds of things are very useful. I also use it for training. You know, I mentor new developers, and I think demystifying the web and showing them it's not magical, right? This is exactly what the request goes to the server. So I often have them say, you know, do I know how many colors are supported on the client? And you pull it up and you say, do you see colors being submitted? Right? I mean, it's not part of the protocol. So you're going to have to do something else to get that to work. But that's been useful as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, like you said, like when you start looking through the stack trace, you can see opportunities. Like it's not just bugs. It's not just, you know, you can start, you know, swapping things out. And that's a great use case where you say, you don't want CSS that's been worked on to be pushed out to prod. You just want to see how it looks and be able to debug through that.
And I do a lot of performance, like you said, you mentioned web performance earlier. The first thing, people walk up to me because I do a lot of performance work too, and they say, can you help me with my site? Instantly, pull up Fiddler. Just do the overview, show them, you know, this page is making 8 megs of requests. Do you see this JPEG? That JPEG alone is 4 meg. You know, I mean, all the things that jump out at you when you get used to looking at the responses and see that's huge. That's not compressed. That's not minified. That's not bundled. Being able to pop in and look at all those sorts of things. And I also use it to see how do people do things, right? I go to a site and I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. What technology are they using? How are they doing that? I can just open Fiddler and get a direct view of here's where they're hosting it. Here's the server they're using. I want to look at that specific JavaScript file, right? That's very useful as well.
Yeah, and something you mentioned, so, you know, when we see newer folks join the industry, you know, coming out of college, maybe it's just a mindset change that they're not being as conscious with some of the things that we're doing with modern web. You know, we look at, you know, NuGet packages or Visual Studio updates or Xcode updates, everything is in gigabytes, and we don't think about compression. We don't think about minimizing or, you know, rendering or optimizing images the right way, until you hit, you know, try to pull all of them up in a spa, and you're on a tiny mobile device, you're going in and out of, you know, network, and things just fall apart if you don't know where the, you know, fine tuning needs to happen.
Yeah, because most developers are sitting on a super fast box, big screen, good connection. So I like also the ability to take, so we changed our site to be responsive, right? We have to support every device that's out there. So I'd use Fiddler forever on the desktop. Suddenly I'm staring at an iPhone and I'm trying to troubleshoot things. And I was like, well, how am I going to do this? You can actually set up your devices to route. So I have Fiddler running on my laptop where I'm used to having it. I can set up my iPhone to route all the traffic through there. And now I'm right back where it was. Not only seeing things, but I can do all the manipulations I want to do on the fly as well, right? So just kind of rapid, and you can do this, it doesn't matter device or not, but being able to rapidly look and say, here's CSS, I'm going to change this on the fly before it gets to the client. Or here comes a request to the server. I want to act like something else, right? I want to do something different using Composer or breakpoints, all those sorts of things to be able to say, I want to change this being sent to the server. What will happen, right, if this doesn't get sent that way? And there's just no other way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Because I mean, I'm in my cross-platform mobile world, which is very, it's very complex sometimes with all the different frameworks and technologies. I do have my Android and my iPhone going through the Fiddler proxy because that's the only way I can see network on those devices. And like you said, what happens when something don't get delivered to the phone and you see the experience. And another thing I see people do is, what if you're working with a team where it's, there are n number of tiers in the front end itself. Like, how did we get here? Modern web is so, complicated, but maybe you're depending on a middleware. Maybe you're depending on some APIs that another team is working on, and they're not ready yet, right? So you need a way to mock things. You need a way to, fake things out. So that's a great way I see, people fake out like a database call that you just have Fiddler return whatever you want. And not actually have to hit up those APIs.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so we do that a lot to get parallel development, right? I don't want to have to wait for the service to be done. I want to agree on the contract, and then I'll tell the other developer, now I'm going to mock this, show me what it should look like, put that in Fiddler coming back to me. Now I can progress, and they can take their weeks while I'm doing the front end. And we often find out, I really don't want the data quite like that. I did tell you that. That's not what I ultimately want. But being able to do that parallel stream because I'm mocking that. Yeah, I mean, the great thing with Fiddler is you can save all these things locally, and it doesn't go to the server at all. So I'm able to continue with my work, not be delayed. And like I said, you learn things when you start the development that you need to change. I don't want to have to wait and do that serially. So.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I mean, we go way back. I think I remember, was it you met Eric at DevReach? Was it in Sofia?
So I met Eric at that conference in Texas.
Oh, that conference.
Yeah,
okay.
so he's in Austin, and so I've read his book so many times. I've talked to him quite often, and he's very responsive. I mean, even now I can send to him and say, even not Fiddler, I don't get why this is happening, and he has such a range of experience. But yeah, so it was great to meet him, and it was great when I was at DevReach in Bulgaria. I got to meet a lot of the Fiddler team, so that was also very cool. So
yeah. And so a couple of parting thoughts here. So tell us how you have seen this journey over the last 20 years, and what are you looking forward to next?
What am I looking for? Well, the constant change is why I became a developer, right? I can't know everything, right? So I'm going to establish I have to have my niche of things that I'm doing, but it's just exciting to be a web developer with all of these tools, like you said, and just I enjoy the change, right? I like seeing there's an improvement, because from where I started till now, it's completely different, and all the things that we've been able to accomplish with all the new tools and things. So I just look forward to, I want to program forever. That's what I like to do. But I like that the tools are keeping up, right? I mean, HTTP 2 comes, now I can do that in Fiddler everywhere, right? I was limited in some of that debugging before. So yeah, I just look forward to, I love web development, keep doing that, keep seeing the tools get better. Meeting a lot of people, like you said, I get to travel a lot, so I do get to meet a lot of other developers and speakers and people, and just see what other people do. That's what I enjoy.
Yeah, well said, well said. I mean, things can get as complicated, but some fundamentals don't change. And if you understand how things work, you're able to get your work done. And like you said, traveling, sharing the love. We appreciate everything that you do, Robert. In fact, folks, if you go out to Fiddler right now and look at the landing pages, you're going to see a lot of videos and things that Robert has put together for us. So we love you for all of that. I like your shirt, by the way. You might see us wearing this shirt. This is actually the cool people, not the TCP that but it's 127.0.0, which is your local host address. So we love seeing you around, Robert, at different conferences. Maybe we'll run into you sometime soonish, but thank you for everything that you do. We really appreciate, the whole Fiddler community appreciates what you have done.
Well, thank you for Fiddler.
Thank you.
Couldn't do my job without it, so I just love to tell people about it.
Absolutely. All right. So Robert, we'll let you get back to your day job.
Right.
Yeah,
sounds
we'll
good.
See you around.
Good to see everybody.
Yeah, folks,
thank you.
We'll let you go here, Robert. I am trying to be cool, trying my best, because I'm going to bring on some very cool people if they're ready. Rosen and Simona, hey!
Hey Sam, how are you?
Am I cool enough? No, not for you. I'm just a set of glasses. Don't do that for me.
If you had a birthday hat instead, that would be cool.
I look for it. I do not actually have a birthday hat handy, but I'll see what I can find. But thank you for being here. Let me change my glasses because I'm kind of blind without them. The fun of getting old, isn't it? All right, welcome, Rosen and Simona. You two are amazing because I get to work with you. But tell us who you are. Introduce yourself, please.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Simona, and I'm a product manager for Fiddler. I have been part of the team for almost 3 years now, and I'm very excited to see the multiple scenarios where Fiddler comes into play and can help users on a daily basis.
And Rosen?
Hey, my name is Rosen, and I'm working as an engineering manager for the co-Fiddler product teams, and I'm here for more than 11 years now, and through my whole journey, I've been using Fiddler in different teams, different circumstances, and now I'm very happy that I'm leading the engineering team for these products.
Nice. See, I think you are just a little ahead of me, Rosen. I'm like 10 and a half years at Progress. So yeah, we're getting around. Although, like I have to say, like Progress software. I mean, we have such a huge portfolio of products. I met somebody who's been working at Progress for 23 years now, so that's going to be a little hard to beat. But we're so happy for all the work that you and the team has done. Fulschnabel, our guest in the chat room. You get offended when I'm old. I don't know how old I am. I'm pretty old, but we get around. The moment your beard starts going gray, like everything is downhill from that point onwards. But hey, we're still trying to be cool, right? That's all that matters. Okay, so Rosen, when did you start working on the Fiddler team?
I started at the end of 2019, maybe, or at the beginning of 2020.
Okay.
So at that point, there were already a couple of Fiddler products. We had the Fiddler Classic version. Fiddler Everywhere was still in work in progress state. We didn't have an official version back then. We also had Fiddler Cup and Fiddler Core at that point. So later, this changed a lot. I'm sure you know much better that we have tons of Fiddler products now, and sometimes people ask us, okay, why do you have so many Fiddler products? But each one of them has its own purpose. But yeah, it's been more than around 4 years now, and we are doing a lot of interesting things in Fiddler.
Indeed. And Simona, when did you join the Fiddler team?
I joined in the beginning of 2021. So Fiddler Everywhere was already official, and it had a lot of users. So I joined, kind of in the beginning, but also not quite. So yeah, I've been part of its progress since then.
Yeah. Now, present day, when we talk about Fiddler, it's quite a few things. So let me try to see if I can bring up my screen. I have been having a few tech issues. Let's see. Can I bring up my entire screen? Yeah, there you go. So let's hide this. Okay, so by the way, folks, this is what we're doing. We did have a landing page. So you can see we talked to Eric, we talked to Rob, we talked to Robert, and now we're talking to the cool people. We all have the cool people t-shirt, Rosen and Simona here from the team. Now, Simona, you wrote up this post, and by the way, like 20 years is an eternity for any software product, especially when it comes to network. It's good to see, we have kept up and we are so on the bleeding edge with things. But this is kind of what Simona was talking about, like Fiddler today. If I, bump up the fonts here a little bit, it's a big family. Folks who have been doing Fiddler on Windows keep on using it as classic, but Fiddler Everywhere is a lot of where Rosen and the team put in all of their love and energy into. It really is a true cross-platform app, runs everywhere with the same UI. And Rosen, I know you like talking about this, but we are dog fooding with our own Angular UI. You talk about performance, like that list view, that grid is just streaming so much of data all through the day.
Yeah, definitely, Sam. And in terms of Fiddler products, you know that as we see here, we have Fiddler Everywhere and Fiddler Classic, as you mentioned, both desktop applications. In Fiddler Everywhere, we incorporate the latest and greatest technologies. We are relying on Angular, Electron, and Angular, and we are also using our internal technologies from the company, our Kendo UI for Angular, both on the client side and on the server side, which is quite specific, I believe. I know many folks are also using it out there, but we had a lot of different issues, and the grid, as you mentioned, is outperforming everything that we have expected. In many cases, what actually happens is that our decisions for how to get the data actually delay the grid, not that the grid delays rendering the data. So we've heard many times, oh, it's delayed, we are not seeing the data as fast as we expect. In all of the cases, the first thought is, oh, maybe it's the grid, it's something, an issue there. No, it's never the grid. It's actually our own mistakes somewhere in the past. And we are incorporating all different modern technologies, as I've mentioned. We are relying, for example, on SignalR. We are using all of those modern tech words that you can hear from everywhere. We try to be at the edge of the technologies. For example, when a new .NET version is released, I would say that we update it as soon as possible, but actually we try it even when it's in alpha or beta state. So we are discussing some of the issues that we face with the Microsoft team. So everything is as you have expected, the top technologies with this product.
Yeah. Well said. And I do have a couple more, follow-up questions. But, Simona, like to your point, we have actually also not forgotten about the non-developers. Like we're thinking about QA people, we're thinking about users. So which is where you see the rest of the Fiddler family come into play. Because like, what if you wanted to see what the end user is seeing? What if you wanted to, somebody in the chat room was asking, Fulschnabel, I think, is what if I wanted to see a dashboard where I want to see traffic in between application servers or multiple microservices? So Fiddler Core is right there to help you do all of that.
Yeah, definitely. Fiddler Core is actually, as mentioned here, at the heart of all Fiddler products, and it's an embeddable library which you can integrate into your application and just integrate the capturing capabilities of Fiddler right there. Yeah.
What I do like is you look at the whole Fiddler family, but I'm looking at it from my lens of how can Fiddler let me do my job better as a developer every day? And some of the things that Rosen said are really key in making Fiddler kind of evolve with the modern network technologies. It's not just HTTP anymore. It's not just one desktop or one app anymore. It's IoT, it's SignalR, it's gRPC, it's TLS. What is the latest one? Like 1.3, Rosen?
1.3,
yeah. So a lot of the network stack is evolving, and we need to evolve with it. So I like to be able to open up Fiddler and have a chat application open that's SignalR powered. It's sitting somewhere on Azure, and I have a iPhone client that's connecting up to it. And I want to be able to see that traffic, not just HTTP, because now it's lower level. Now it really is WebSockets. And there is no other tool, nothing else that's going to do that for me other than Fiddler. So I appreciate how we have kept on top of, network. And is that a challenge, Rosen, like for the engineering team?
Oh, definitely. In many cases, as you described it, people expect that when they plug in Fiddler, they will just see the traffic and everything will work. But behind this, there is a lot of effort. And in many cases, we hit issues that we just didn't expect that they will be there. For example, something that we can mention here is that there are issues in all of the frameworks that we are using. For example, we rely on the .NET. We have .NET Code, and in some cases, it behaves differently on macOS and Windows, which is kind of expected. There are different platforms, they behave in different way, but even the .NET team sometimes is not able to make it constant and usable in the same way on the two platforms. So we have to work around them, to discuss them with the .NET teams. Also, as you've mentioned, the network world is evolving every day. We were just about to release the HTTP2 support, its first version, and at the moment when we did it, people started asking, "What about HTTP3? When are you going to support it?" Yeah, one interesting fact here, still there's no official version and documentation how to have an HTTP3 proxy. So we want to have HTTP3 proxy, but we cannot do it because there's no specification how to do it. There's a work on the RFC there, but so even if we want to do it, we'll probably not be compliant with all of the HTTP3 servers and clients out there.
Right,
This is
right.
definitely like a great feedback that people communicate this with us so that we keep up with what actually everyone else needs to see and what functionalities they are looking to have at some point, so that we know how to build our roadmap and when to deliver this as soon as we can, of course, and as soon as there is official documentation and all of that. So yeah, very, very useful in terms of feedback.
Absolutely. So I'm going to paste in one link here. So feedback.telerik.com. So folks like Rosen and Simona are listening all the time because we cannot be building something for the developer community in our own silo. We need to listen to what your pains are, what you're struggling with, and you go to feedback.telerik.com and you choose Fiddler. You tell us what you're looking at and what you need built. And, in terms of product roadmaps and what's coming up in the next sprint, we always, listen to the community. But, there are some challenges, like you said, Rosen, we have to depend on the .NET team. We have to depend on the Angular team. We have to depend on, the W3. What's the organization that sets the standards? W3C? Is that still the thing?
I think yes, but it's more of a community that's working from all of the big companies, and they're working on those specifications. They are testing them. All of the main browser engines are involved in those conversations. So they're kind of slow, but there's a reason for this. They need to be verified into all the scenarios. So yeah, all of different aspects here. But at the end of the day, our customers do not care about all of that. What we need to do is do our job and find the best way to do it. One example here is the gRPC support. We've heard it from a couple of people. Then we started investigating what is the gRPC, because I have to be honest, I didn't know what is it. So I haven't used it at all. So we dug deeper, and at some point, multiple people were asking us for it. So we started working on it. Yeah, we had some issues, we had some troubles, but now we have gRPC support in Fiddler everywhere. So you can try it, and it will continue to evolve based on the user's feedback. We'll probably add additional functionalities around it.
And not to put you in the spot, but speaking of gRPC, Foolish Nabble in the chat room was asking a question, which I don't know if you know an answer off the top, but protobuf is kind of the lower lying technology that we're using network stack wise for a lot of gRPC. Do you know if we are schema dependent, or is this something that you need to, dig in more?
Currently, we show only the bytes. So this is something that we are looking at. So if you can use the link that Sam shared and share all of the details, how you want to use the protobuf and how would you want to decode the traffic, because there are 2 points how you can decode it actually, the protobuf. One is to provide a file that contains the description. It could be a description file or protobuf or a couple of protobuf files. And the other way to handle it is to, if the server supports server reflection. So this is not an official, as far as I know, it's still not officially supported by all gRPC servers, but some of them support it, and this is another way to get the schema. So we are looking at this, and yes, Simona, are we going to have this soon?
Next sprint. Get it done right now.
Definitely in the works, and the more information we have from users, the faster we'll be able to design it and release it and all of that. Currently, there is partially an option to read such messages through our hex viewer inspectors. So yeah, but definitely looking to involve this in the direction of a schema. And
Yeah. I used to think I'm hardcore on some fronts until I saw the hex view. I'm like, I don't understand any of this. So we do need the community to step up and tell us a little bit more about what they want built, and we need community folks who can read 1,114 million words in a W3 spec. So good for you, Schnabel. To Rosen and your point here, Fulschnabel, these network stacks are evolving, and there sometimes aren't standardizations around it. So we just have to pace ourselves a little bit and not to go do the wrong thing. So yeah. Oh yeah. Hey, Fulschnabel is being hardcore, decoding hex bits and bytes like decom days. Yeah, do not talk about com. That gives us a lot of nightmares. So let me ask you this, Rosen and Simona. You have seen the product evolve, but if you have to look at just the last 1 year, okay, what's your favorite thing that we have done?
This is a very difficult question.
It's like picking your favorite child.
Yeah.
You're going to alienate somebody.
We can definitely mention a few of the things that we have worked on and what we're excited to see next. We spoke about how Fiddler can be beneficial for different roles in different scenarios, but recently we introduced an offline mode in Fiddler Everywhere, which actually targets teams who operate in a stricter environment with limited or no internet access. So this is something that we wanted to include in Fiddler Everywhere so that it covers this case as well, and teams can actually do their job and use the core functionalities of Fiddler even in such environments. What else would you say?
Out that here, I'm not sure if it is in the last year, but probably it is, the option to start a pre-configured terminal. So this is yeah, because I love using terminals, and in the past I've been working on some command line interfaces, and I feel like home there. So when I need to work on some projects, I often like to use Node.js. I use such terminals, but you know that many of the modern frameworks, they just don't respect the system proxy. So the traffic from these applications cannot be easily captured in any proxy tool. So we were looking at this and decided that it is a good option to allow an easier setup for all of those users, because when you have an issue and you want to capture the HTTP traffic, you shouldn't focus on configuration of the tool. You should focus on your own issues. And that's why we've introduced this option. It currently supports Node.js main libraries, Python, Curl, and a lot of other tools probably. And when you start it, you can just focus, as I've mentioned, on your own application, and their traffic will be captured by Fiddler.
This is a very good thing that you said, focusing on what exactly you want to work with. Recently, we spent a lot of time actually working on improving the user's flow, and especially the getting started experience, the onboarding with our features directly in the application. And we introduced a home section where the user can see our main functionalities. They can go through each wizard, which not only guides them through and tells, explains relevant information about the feature, but also does the steps for each configuration automatically for the user, so that the user, as you mentioned, should not spend time on configuration, but on getting to the information they need faster and doing their job. And this is something that we wanted to work on in order for the users to focus on their code base and to resolving issues faster, potential issues much faster.
Yeah, well said. So I actually see like two trends, and I'm glad that the Fiddler team tries to cater to both. So there are some instances where I've seen enterprises and IT companies where somebody new joins and IT just gives them a laptop or a desktop, and it's very locked in. Like I understand the need for security and protecting intellectual property, but developers need to have a little bit of admin control to be able to do things that we do. But for scenarios where you just don't have that option, Fiddler does give you an inbuilt pre-configured browser, so you can at least test your app without having to install or go through the admin route. And the other option to what you were saying, Simona, like configurations, I see a lot of trend where Microsoft has this thing called the dev box, and other companies have similar offerings where just the modern day cross-platform or web development is very complex. There are so many frameworks and tool chains that you're depending on. So companies like to just set up one VM, which is already pre-configured to exactly what you're wanting to do as a developer, and just that's where people start. That's where you log in. Maybe it's a VM that's local inside the enterprise, maybe it's in the cloud, but if you can think of having Fiddler pre-installed, then someone can just come in and just get started right away. Without having to mess with any configurations, it's already done for you. Now, I asked the two of you about your favorite feature. I'll tell you mine, and this is not going to sound as as fancy, but it's very useful because I am overwhelmed very easily. I'm an old man. I mean, my eyes fail. So this is how you know that you're old. Okay, when you look at your phone and you start doing like this, and you're trying to zoom in and out so you can read, that's a sign that you're getting old. And so I get overwhelmed very easily with the amount of traffic that Fiddler captures. So filtering, that is so nice to be able to filter down to exactly my app, my type of traffic, my HTTP response. I don't care about anything else. Just show me the stuff that I care about. So I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, I can add to that because you mentioned favorite features. Mine would be the rules, and partially because of what you mentioned, but also expanding it a little bit more because I believe the rules is a very diverse feature. You can filter traffic with it. You can mark specific sessions. You can modify traffic or different parts of it, and you can organize the rules by type, by use case, and with the grouping functionality. And it's just a great feature as a whole, so definitely covers a lot of use cases.
Yeah, and to your point, your rules don't need to be just your rules, because now we are enabling team collaboration, so you can share your rules with me.
Yep.
Yeah. Fulshna was talking about how people get laptops and how some ITs can be. Yeah. Being old is waking up every day. Yeah.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, that's true. But it's been a journey for the Fiddler team, and so let me ask you some internal things. The Fiddler team, how do you folks work? Does everybody come into the office every day? How much of it is remote? How much do you yell over Teams calls? How do you get stuff done?
That's Rosen's favorite topic.
Is someone from my team asking you about this? They told you to ask this question, right?
No. So tell us the internal, workings. How do you plan for a release? How do you get stuff done every day?
Well, in the last years, I have to say that we have invested a lot in improvements in all of our internal processes. For example, in terms of security measures to ensure that the code base that we provide is at the highest possible level of security. We know that in this world, every day we hear about new security issues, and that's why we have invested a lot of efforts to improve our current process and ensure that our users and both we are protected from all kind of threats that might happen. In terms of planning, what actually happens is we have sprint, two-week sprints. And before the beginning of each sprint, both me and Simona, we look at all of the issues that were walked during this time, and we prioritize them. So, for example, if you write to us something that you have found as an issue, we will log it in our internal systems, or we will have it in the feedback portal. And at most, after 2 weeks, we'll have it prioritized and probably release it after maybe 2 more weeks. Also, we have changed our release process. Now we are trying to push new features and functionalities as soon as possible. Current schedule is maybe around 2 weeks for release, which, this is something that was not expected for
it's hard. It's hard when you have that short of release window.
Yeah, it's hard, but after a couple of such releases, we figured out that everyone in the team is much happier with this current schedule instead of having a longer time frame and delaying releases and so on. In terms of having people in the office. We are working for 2 days in the office and the rest of the days remotely, but we love being together. So the 2 days are, let's say, mandatory to have the collaboration, to discuss new functionalities, we love drawing on the boards, discussing features, how to design them in a way that will be most useful for the people. And the rest of the days, there are always people in the office. So as I've mentioned, we love being together.
And we have an absolute beautiful office in Sofia, Bulgaria, which I'm always jealous whenever I visit. And, in the last, 3-4 years with the pandemic and everything, I think we have all learned how to work smarter, virtual and, remote. But there are some things that you just, need to be together. Like engineering, hardcore engineering is one of them, where you're literally trying to brainstorm and draw things out on a board. As good as Teams and Slack and Skype are, you need to be around people. And, like I'm in a job role where I am mostly remote, but like if you tell me to not go see my team or anybody else for like months, I'll, start losing my mind. You need to be able to see people and, talk people. So, yeah. Teams is good. It's objectionable. I have a good story. There was one time I was wearing a mask on a plane, and I had forgotten what it was because it was something I had gotten from a Microsoft event. It was a Teams mask, so it was Teams logo. And so the guy next to me says, "So you are okay with your mask working sometimes, right?" I'm like, "What?" And then it struck me like he's talking about Teams being flaky. So. Yeah, it's not just Teams. Like every app has their pros and cons and how much memory they consume, but at least they, let us do our jobs a little bit better. I think, from my standpoint, who, does a lot of, talking and speaking, like virtual conferences are just not fun because like you don't get, like in a Teams call, you're at least talking to humans, it's a dialogue. But if it's just one directional, I'm just talking to a camera, that's just no fun at all. So anyways, modern tech and all the fun stuff. So we are almost coming up at time here, but let me ask you another question here. Looking ahead at the next year, maybe even 5 years, okay? What are you excited about? Where do you want to see Fiddler go?
What I can mention here is regarding to all of these options for capturing that we introduced, multiple capturing options we introduced in the last year. We actually started asking ourselves, can we actually go to an even lower level and really allow the users to capture the whole HTTP traffic from their machine? And we see new modern technologies that do not respect the system proxy. We see scenarios that involve capturing of services traffic running with other users. And this led to us trying to develop something like a feature that would solve all of these use cases. And this functionality is actually coming very soon. And we're very excited for everyone to try it out. We're definitely working in this direction, more capturing capabilities, more protocols to be included in the application. Anything on your side?
Yeah, just to add about what you've mentioned, this new functionality, hopefully it will be out very soon, but it's so powerful. And of course, as you know, with great power comes great responsibility. So we are trying to be on the safe side as well here.
That's what they say. That's what they want you to be safe.
Yeah, I think this will be one of the most powerful features in Fiddler, and I'm really excited about it and can't wait to show it to the people. To be honest, no one knew about it, so this is the first time we are actually mentioning it. Hopefully people will...
Drum rolls, you heard it here first.
Regarding your question, how do we see Fiddler in a year or in 5 years? I see the struggles with all the technologies that evolve, and we need to catch up often. But I imagine that after 5 years, Fiddler will be the tool for all of the security people, all the people who need to capture something and to find issues in it. So as I've mentioned earlier, we see security issues in everywhere around us. And this is a topic that will never end.
No.
We see a lot of risks, especially in the circumstances where even elections tend to be, when we talk about elections, we tend to talk about security. And that's where I imagine Fiddler can help a lot in the future and be the tool for security protocols and everything around this team.
Yeah, no, that is well said. Because, like, in our modern digital world, you have to be able to trust, digital information, and if that's been mucked with, or if that's been, fiddled in any way, or if that's been used as a security vector, that's never good. So that's a good angle. Like, more and more security people will be, starting to use tools like Fiddler. And I know folks in the chat room are talking about this. Certainly, Dev. So come and see us at conferences. We are also very excited with developer conferences. Like you see these like TCP shirts that me and Simona are wearing. We do conferences all over the world. We do a lot of in the US, and we do a lot of in Europe. So come and find us, see where we might be, going as a team. Sometimes, one person from Fiddler, one person from Telerik or Can-Do, I might be there, but we are always out there with these cool shirts. So come and, snag some of this from us. When speaking of more conferences, DevReach, that's coming up. Yeah, thanks, Eve, for the pointer here. DevReach is our big conference coming up in Sofia. We actually have not been able to do it the last 2 years, so we are very excited to come back and put this on. We get together a huge crowd and some very passionate speakers from all over the world, and it's just a really good time. All right, so yes, the birthday party will continue because all of October is Fiddler's birthday time. So 2003 October is when Fiddler was first launched, so we can treat this the whole month of birthday celebrations. UK, oh yeah, sorry Dave, I forgot you're from the UK. We do a few shows like NDC London, I think. I forget, like there are a couple of things we have done in the UK, so absolutely anytime. What else? Yeah, t-shirts are cool. T-shirts are very cool. So, some of the plastic swag that we give out, sometimes that's a little questionable, but t-shirts, I mean, they last you a long time. I almost buy nothing in my home closet. Everything is from conference t-shirts. That's and my wife has a rule that, I mean, I cannot bring in like 5 new t-shirts until I make space for it. So I've held on to shirts for like 10 years plus. But this has been a great show. Simona and Rosen and the entire team, we are so thankful for what you do day in and day out to make Fiddler what it is today. It's a big portfolio. It's a lot of work. We know that, but you are helping us in ways that you don't even know. Dev teams, QA teams, support teams, end users, embedding Fiddler inside of dashboards. You are enabling all of that. So thank you. So I think that's it from us. Happy birthday again, Fiddler. It's been quite the journey for the last 20 years. Let's look forward to the next decade. Let's look forward to the next 20 years, and we'll see what the world looks like. But thankfully, with Fiddler in it, we'll do good things. All right, chat room, Full Schnabel, Thindel, Surly Dev, Eve, Cindy, everybody else who's been hanging around with us. Thank you so much. And a big thank you to all of our speakers. We really wanted to get back to the history and the early days, and you can't do that without Eric and then so much of the history that he has. Rob came on and talked about how the early days of the evolution was, and Robert Boedigheimer has always been our go-to person to think about Fiddler outside of the box in performance tuning and however you're wanting to, maybe in design system thinking, swapping out CSS. So all of those scenarios are things people are using Fiddler for, and we are very grateful. The team is grateful for our passionate user base. Rosen, Simona, any last words?
Well, happy birthday, Fiddler.
Yeah, indeed. Happy birthday. Yeah, thank you, Thindel. Thanks for hanging out with us. It's been great. And happy birthday, Fiddler. We'll see you around for the next 20 years. Okay, so on that thought, bye for now and take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.